Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Swaparantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Laita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bhivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So, welcome to Nectar Devotion Study. So today we'll be discussing Chapter 3. The title of Chapter 3 is The Eligibility of the Candidate for Accepting Devotional Service. So, just a quick review of Chapter 2. We spoke last time that there were two ways to practice sadhana bhakti. The Vaidhi sadhana path and the Raganuga sadhana path. And Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is this regulated devotional service and practice. And the Raganuga is this spontaneous mood of devotional service. In Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, one is following the guidance of Guru and Shastra in executing devotional service. And in Raganuga, one has developed an internal spontaneous attraction for devotional service. The activities are the same, but the impetus for doing our japa, for performing Mangal Arati, dressing the deities, all the different worship, it is different, and we'll talk about that. And so the goal is to try to bring ourselves to this mood of spontaneity by expertly following the Vaidhi sadhana principles. And the Vaidhi sadhana bhakti principles is what Srila Rupa Goswami is going to be talking about here until chapter 15. All about how to perform Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. And as I just mentioned, the difference between Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti is the impetus. What is the inspiration to perform devotional service? In Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, it comes out of having some faith in Guru and Shastra, and thus surrendering to those instructions. It is by the strict adherence. There's not an internal or one's own attachment. But one has faith that Guru and Shastra, they will guide me to perfection. And in Raganuga sadhana bhakti, one becomes inspired by the heart. The sadhana is performed, we are in sadhana bhakti, the sadhana is performed due to a spontaneous attraction to do so. So we want to chant our rounds. We're so excited to attend Mangal Arati like this. So the activities are the same, and they're both sadhana, but the impetus is different. One is internal and one is external. And Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti mostly, not always, but mostly arises from Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So as one perfects Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, one can, if they have such desire, elevate to Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. But that must be one's desire. So by setting a goal, what is the intention of my Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, I can bring about this spontaneous mood of devotion, again, if that is my goal and objective. And so our hope is that we're performing our Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti not mechanically or not ritualistically, going through the motions, but with this desire for this, evoking this spontaneous attraction. And we'll speak more about that later in this course. So now just a quick review of where we've come so far and where we're going to be in this chapter. So in the introduction, Srila Rupa Goswami gave us this very perfect definition of pure devotional service, the absolute complete definition, free from all desires, free from karmic activities, monistic philosophy, targeted towards Krishna in a favorable mood, following in the footsteps, this very complete verse he gave. And then in chapter 1, he explained what are the characteristics that are awarded to the practitioner of pure devotional service. So one who does this anyabhilashita shunyam jnana kamadhyana vitamanukuli Krishna uttama, this uttama bhakti, one who performs that, what are the 6 characteristics that are awarded as one goes from sadhana bhakti to bhava bhakti to prema bhakti? So that was explained. And then in the last chapter, in chapter 2, Rupa Goswami is describing now the devotional service and practice, this sadhana bhakti, and how to practice pure devotional service, the 2 different moods we just talked about. And so now in chapter 3, Srila Rupa Goswami is going to discuss the qualifications for practicing pure devotional service. So what is the eligibility of the candidate for practicing devotional service? So this is a little bit of the flow of where we have come so far. So now, chapter 3, it covers sort of 3 main topics. And I wanted to just lay them out because sometimes the intersection of these 3 and their overlap a little bit in the presentation. But we'll have 3 main categories we're going to discuss today. First is, what is the qualification to start devotional service? That is the first. We've already discussed this in the first chapter, but we'll revisit that. And then 2, what is the qualification to practice pure bhakti? So sometimes when we read these 2, we say, wait a minute. One says attraction, the other says, well, we must have faith and knowledge of Shastra, and ultimately, what is the obstacles to pure bhakti? We say, well, one must be free from all material desires. So we're going to discuss these 3 and their relation. So the qualification to start bhakti, the qualification to practice pure bhakti, and the obstacles and the practice of pure devotional service. So this is the structure of this 3rd chapter, and we'll discuss these in sequence. So what do we need to start pure devotional service? So Srila Prabhupada opens this chapter with this thing. On account of his association with Mahatmas, or great souls, 100% in devotional service, Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Sri Krishna. He later says in that same paragraph, such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. So we know that we only need unflinching attraction, even a little bit, and devotional service can come about. So devotional service is causeless. In essence, there are no prerequisites. We don't even need knowledge or detachment. Anything we want to start has some prerequisites. If I want to start a job, there's some things I need to do, qualification I need. If I want to get into a college, I need some qualification. If I want to get into some social club, there's some qualification. But for devotional service, one needs nothing but just some attraction. And this is the magnanimity of the Lord. That you don't even have to be detached from something else. He doesn't say, hey, you have to detach from things that are not related to me in order to begin practicing devotional service. We can use a mundane example to explain how wonderful this is. That, to get a job, if you want to go work for somebody, you must first give up your other job. It doesn't say, hey, you can try me out for a few weeks, and if you like it, then I'll come and join you. No, the employer says, if you want to work here, you must give up your other job and join. But Krishna doesn't give that condition. He says you can practice devotional service even if you are still materially attached, and we'll talk more about that. But so it's an extraordinary gift that Krishna is giving us. Even in a relationship between husband and wife, one agrees they have to give up all of their relationships in order to enter into that relationship. And not even knowledge is needed. To drive a car, you need some knowledge. To become a citizen of a country, you need some knowledge. But Krishna is saying you don't even need knowledge to practice devotional service, just some attraction. So it is very, very fortunate that we have this opportunity. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada quotes this verse from 11th canto, 20th chapter, 8th verse. Only by exceptional fortune does someone become attracted to me. And even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities, or is not completely detached or completely attached to devotional service, such service is quickly effective. So this is Krishna speaking to Uddhavji in Srimad Bhagavatam. How extraordinary. He says, by exceptional fortune. The key word here is fortune. It is the greatest of all fortunes that we have to have come in contact with Srila Prabhupada and Guru Parampara, to have developed some attraction for devotional service. And that is a fortune that we should be very mindful of not to squander. Any fortune we have, we know we always try to protect it. And so, how to achieve this qualification, this attraction, how to get it? And where does it start? Srila Prabhupada comments here. He says, on account of his association with Mahatmas, or great souls, 100% in devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Sri Krishna. This is the opening sentence of this chapter. So this eligibility to start devotional service, this attraction, it comes from association. We said the causeless mercy of a devotee. And I put this other verse here. Srila Prabhupada references this verse in saying that it is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya that only the fortunate persons, by the mercy of both bona fide spiritual master and Krishna, will get the seed of devotional service. This is this very famous verse Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains in Madhya Lila, chapter 19, verse 151. I'll read just a translation. According to their karma, all living entities are wandering throughout the entire universe. Some of them are being elevated to the upper planetary systems, and some are going down into the lower planetary systems. Out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. This is actually our only fortune in this material world. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again says, out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. This is the greatest of all fortune, because from this initial interaction, one can begin the process of devotional service, come to the platform of pure devotional service, begin Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, progress to Raghunaga Sadhana Bhakti, to Bhava Bhakti, to Krishna Prema, to obtain such extraordinary happiness and bliss from executing pure devotional love, that one can even bring Krishna under their own control. That extraordinary ability and opportunity begins with the opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the mercy of Krishna. So sometimes we forget the value of this great fortune. This seed of bhakti gives us the potential to achieve perfection of life. We know the value of $1 million of fortune, or we know the fortune of getting a promotion, or a healthy child, or a lovely car. But nothing is as fortunate as getting this seed of bhakti, this bhakti lata bij. So this is the important instruction Rupa Goswami is reminding of us very early in this first chapter, in this third chapter, that this seed of bhakti, it is our only real fortune. And this principle of detachment, we'll talk a little bit about, but this vairagya, this renunciation, it is not a requisite to start devotional service. One can begin even if they have material attachments. And with the waves of devotion, we are guided that too much renunciation also can be dangerous, taking an overly renounced mood, because it is our emotions, it is our engagement of the senses in devotional service that leads one to awaken this Krishna prema. And so by renouncing the using of the senses, by trying to shut off the senses, it can be very difficult to progress in devotional service. So we'll learn more about renunciation in this proper renunciation, this yukta vairagya principle that Rupa Goswami will explain to us very importantly. But again, knowledge and detachment are not required to begin. So now, let us see the qualification for practicing pure devotional service. You may be wondering, what is this picture here? So let us first discuss this term, adhikari. It means the qualification or eligibility to practice pure devotional service. So, the eligibility to advance in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti specifically is what we're going to be talking about. Again, until chapter 15, Rupa Goswami now is exclusively speaking on Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So what is the eligibility to make progress or to advance in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti? That is what Rupa Goswami is presenting here. So there are two factors that determine our advancement in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And the first is our faith in the objective and the knowledge of scriptures. And the second is the first is the faith in the objective, and the second is the knowledge of scriptures. So these two things are what determine our advancement. And why these two? Because in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, we're following the rules and regulations of scripture and guru. So how much faith do we have in what is being explained to us by guru and shastra? And how much knowledge do I have I actually realized from what is being explained? Because the impetus to perform Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is this Guru and Shastra. Then my faith in Guru and Shastra and my knowledge of Shastra, that is what determines my advancement. And now let us define specifically in the faith. what is required here? What is the definition of the faith that we're speaking of? It is faith that the ultimate goal of life is to attain loving service of Krishna, and to know that Krishna is the only object of love. This is the faith we are trying to develop. Again, the ultimate goal of life is to attain loving service of Krishna. I have no other goal. Yeah, $1 million, world fame, beauty, strength. No. My ultimate goal is to attain loving service of Krishna. And I have faith that Krishna is the only object worthy of my love. So to the degree I feel this, I believe this, I live this, that defines the extent of my faith. So complete confidence that there is nothing else in this world that is worthy of my time or attention. Nothing. And so, we have faith in so many things. I have faith in the value of $100. I have faith in the value of some beauty, or faith in the value of some position in society. But this is the real faith that determines our advancement. So we try to take all these other things that we have faith in and bring it to the ultimate and exclusive faith that my only objective is to lovingly serve. So you'll see Srila Prabhupada in this chapter speak about faith in the objective. This is the objective. That the only objective of my life is to love Krishna, and Krishna is the only object of my life. So that is this very specific faith that we're speaking about. And it takes faith to commit. Like this lady, these are called trust falls. If you're going to fall backwards, you must have faith that somebody is going to catch you. And how much faith it takes? Quite a bit to put oneself in such a position. So, how much faith we have to give up all other activities and focus exclusively on serving Krishna. Takes a strong amount of faith. And that is what will determine our advancement in devotional service. And this faith comes from devotional service and from our knowledge. So, we discussed in Nectar of Instruction this 3 levels of qualification. So, we have the Kanishta Adhikari, the Madhyama Adhikari, and the Uttama Adhikari. So there are 3 levels of qualification a devotee can have to practice pure devotional service. Again, these are levels of qualification to practice Uttama Bhakti, this pure, highest devotional service. So our goal is to increase our qualification to practice pure devotional service, to make progress. So we'll start with the highest, and that is the Uttama Adhikari. The highest qualification to practice is the Uttama Adhikari. And they have pure faith in this ultimate goal of life, which is to attain loving service of Krishna. And they know that Krishna is the only object of love. And you can see their faith by their actions. Because their faith is so strong, they do nothing else but serve Krishna. Just like one in the mode of passion has so much faith in the value of money that their whole existence is about how to accumulate more money. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, constantly thinking how I can make more and more money. So like using that mundane analogy, one who has faith like an Uttama Adhikari in this objective has no other business, fully engaged in simply finding how to serve and please Krishna. And their knowledge of Shastra, it is absolute, complete. That so complete that they can present and debate with anyone and use scriptural evidence in order to defeat one's arguments and to set one on the right path of devotional service. So this firm faith, it develops from understanding all the reasons, all the knowledge that is given in Shastra. It is not blind faith. It's experienced faith and informed faith. So this knowledge helps work together with one's faith. And Srila Prabhupada explains then that why this Uttamadhikari can become a guru. Because he can convince anyone on the basis of scripture. That is the key qualification. On the basis of scripture. Not just one's own logic or one's own idea. But using Shastra to help somebody understand how to make progress in perfection of life. And then Srila Prabhupada again comments, I wanted to read this quote, that how to reach this point is very important. This first-class devotee is one who has strictly followed the rules and regulations under the training of a bona fide spiritual master and has sincerely obeyed him in accord with the revealed scriptures, thus being fully trained to preach and become a spiritual master himself. He is considered first class. So we see that this first class has strictly followed the rules and regulations. It means that they have perfected the Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Right? That is the means for the higher qualification. And they have been trained under the bona fide spiritual master. It is critical that they're following this parampara. This knowledge comes only in parampara. One's position as a spiritual master comes only from parampara, not from one's own mental concoction, their own ideas. So Srila Prabhupada comments about this. Now, the second level is the Madhyamadhikari. They have very strong faith in the objective. We can say is unflinching. It means they'll not be swayed off of their position. And their knowledge, it is developing. They have quite a bit of knowledge of Shastra, but they can't always defeat others based on Shastra. And so the strong faith, very similar to the Uttamadhikari, but the knowledge is developing. This is the position of the Madhyamadhikari. And then in the Kanishta Adhikari, the faith is very soft, weak. We call it pliable. They have some faith that the objective of life is to serve Krishna and only have love for him, but it is weak. And their knowledge of Shastra is also weak. And this puts one in a bit of a dangerous position, because one can be swayed from their position, because neither their faith nor their knowledge is very strong. So the association then becomes very, very critical in this position. But with good association, one can develop their knowledge and their faith and be protected from being moved by some ulterior motives or ulterior logic, and can make progress continuing forward. So, but remember, this Kanishtadhikari, they're practicing Uttama Bhakti, this pure devotional service, this highest Bhakti. So the practice is the highest, but the faith and the knowledge is still very limited. So they're in the very early stages of practicing this Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So I wanted to make this important point that in the ways of devotion this is made, and Srila Prabhupada makes it in Nectar of Devotion, this line of demarcation between the pure devotional service and the Kanishtadhikari and the four pious souls we read about in Bhagavad Gita, and Srila Prabhupada speaks quite a bit about this in his presentation of chapter 3. So what is it that distinguishes the Kanishta Adhikari, and of course the higher levels, from the four pious types of devotees? So the Kanishta Adhikari has some faith that the only goal of life is to please Krishna. the four pious souls, they don't have faith that the only objective is to please Krishna, right? Because they're coming to Krishna with some desire, not only to please him, either in need of money, in distress, to satisfy their curiosity, or to acquire some wisdom, to be wise. So there is some other desire. It is not exclusively only to please Krishna. And thus it is not yet pure devotional service. The Kanishta is in the beginning stages of pure devotional service because they have some faith that the only goal is to please Krishna. Right? So this faith thus means that there are no self-desires. Because if I have faith that the only goal is to please Krishna, then by definition, I have no self-motive. Only means exclusive. Right? So by definition, if I have some of this faith, even if it is weak, I am within the realm of pure devotional service. Right? Because, again, we can only practice pure devotional service, anya bilashita shunyam. No other desires. So this faith is a very important piece of this demarcation for pure devotional service. No self-desires distinguishes pure bhakti from ordinary bhakti. Remember again, the secondary characteristics of that verse is what distinguishes pure bhakti from ordinary bhakti. This anyabhilashita shunyam jnana kamadi anavatam. The absence of any other desires. And this is present when there is some of this faith. So the four pious souls, they are coming to Krishna with some desires, some goals. So it is not yet pure devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada comments that the piety of the four pious souls, it is a precursor for developing this type of faith. Sometimes one comes from the mood of wanting and in desperate need of some money or health, and it leads one to Krishna. And by coming to Krishna, one obtains the sukriti, the blessings of the Lord, to mature their understanding to this higher position. So it is not yet pure, but it is considered very pious. And Krishna himself calls them pious because he says at least they are approaching me with their desires. And it is he who will help purify them of their desires. He will help them become anyabhilashita shunyam. So this is the position. Just briefly, we'll discuss that the four pious souls, the first is one in need of money. Second, one who is in distress and is desiring freedom from some distress. So they approach Krishna. The third are those who are curious and they approach Krishna to satisfy their curiosity. And the fourth is the wise, the jnani, who has some knowledge, some desire for knowledge. There's a desire to know. So, the example of Dhruva Maharaj approached Krishna in need for money. And we see how he was very quickly purified of these desires. Gajendra approached Krishna in distress. The sages at Narmesharanya, they approached Sutta Goswami out of their curiosity. The four Kumaras are the examples of those who are wise. And so these four souls, four types of people, they approach Krishna with these desires. And Prabhupada's point he's making is that through this piety, they can advance to the higher realms of pure devotional service. But let us understand the point of demarcation is this faith in the objective of exclusively serving Krishna. Okay? So now we'll come to the second point here, the third point here of our structure of the chapter, which is the obstacles in pure devotional service. Now, we said in the beginning that one only needs an attraction to start. One doesn't need any detachment or even knowledge. But now we're saying that one must be free of the bodily conception of life to enter pure devotional service. So is this a contradiction? We said only attraction is needed, and now we're saying one must be completely free of their bodily conception of life. So it is not a contradiction. But the point here is that one can start devotional service with a little bit of attraction. But to enter pure devotional service, we must become free of this bodily conception of life. And the bodily conception of life, we understand it is there whenever there are material desires. All of our material desires means we have some conception of this body, my senses. That is the symptom of this bodily conception. Any material desires. So, if I have faith that my only goal is to please Krishna, then will I have any other goal to please my body, to please my senses? No. So, the bodily conception means, again, material desires. It means there's no faith that the only objective is to please Krishna. Right? That only piece is the key. And so, how does this develop is important. Right? So, by faith in Shastra, by understanding Shastra, I can understand I am spirit soul. I am not this body. This very basic understanding we get. And that can bring us to become free from this bodily conception. Knowing that satisfying the urges of the senses of the body will lead to no good for me. This all comes from knowledge of Shastra, the faith in the Shastra, which leads to this freedom from bodily conception. When I have no bodily conception, then I can have this type of faith of only desire to please Krishna. That cannot come until I'm free from my bodily conception. And with that, then I can begin pure devotional service. So we can see how this is all interrelated and connected. And to be free from the bodily conception is a prerequisite for pure devotional service. It is not a prerequisite to start, but it is a prerequisite to enter pure devotional service. And so, Srila Rupa Goswami says there's ghosts and witches that are obstacles on our path of devotional service. And these are bhukti and mukti. The material desires present an obstacle for pure devotional service. You cannot enter pure devotional service. And mukti, the desire for freedom from anxieties, or to merge into the impersonal. These are desires. And they are not, one cannot taste the pure devotional service unless one is free from these. So the rasa, the happiness from pure bhakti, one cannot relish it, taste it, unless these two obstacles are removed. They hinder one's ability to taste it. And we'll speak more about this next week. So I just wanted to read another quote from the chapter here. That Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore compared possessing these bhukti, material, and mukti, liberation, desires, with being influenced by the black art of a witch. In both cases, one is in trouble. Bhukti means material enjoyment, and mukti means to become free from material anxiety and to become one with the Lord. These desires are compared to being haunted by ghosts and witches, let me start that sentence over again. These desires are compared to being haunted by ghosts and witches,
because while these aspirations for material enjoyment or spiritual oneness with the Supreme remain, no one can relish the actual transcendental taste of devotional service. So, the taste, again, cannot be relished if these are present. And like a ghost, a ghost is haunted, meaning they are forced to act in certain ways, even though they may not want to. So like that, the ghosts of material desires, they force us to act in a means to try to satisfy these desires. Right? This pursuit of liberation, freedom from material anxiety, it can be a hindrance, an obstacle to devotional service. So we'll see a whole chapter is dedicated, this next chapter, on prayers, highlighting the importance of avoiding this desire for mukti. It's very interesting that Srila Rupa Goswami has dedicated a whole chapter, this 4th chapter, to verse after verse after verse, 25 plus verses. I think there's 28 of them in total, all describing the importance and the idea that devotional service surpasses liberation, to help us free us from this desire. Right? So how will these desires go away? How to remove them? By the higher taste. Bhova Mangala Thakur says, if I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily I can perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. Bhova Mangala Thakur is saying, engage in devotional service unto you, then even liberation is just waiting at the doorstep, ready to serve. This is the higher taste of devotional service. Right? And Srila Prabhupada ends this in this second to last paragraph. I just wanted to read one more. That a similar passage appears in the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, verse 34. Excuse me. 3rd chapter. 3rd canto, 4th chapter, verse 15. Wherein Uddhav addresses Lord Krishna and says, my dear Lord, for persons who are engaged in your transcendental loving service, there is nothing worth obtaining from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Although happiness from these different sources can be very easily had by them. In spite of such facilities, my dear Lord, I do not aspire to achieve any such results. My only prayer is that I may have unflinching faith and devotion unto your lotus feet. We see this dharma, artha, kama, moksha. These supposed 4 pursuits of life. But one who has experienced pure devotional service, one doesn't aspire for any of them. They only aspire to achieve unflinching faith and devotion to Krishna. So the only way to be unmotivated, again in summary, is to have no bodily conception of life. To have only conception of, I am spirit soul and I am eternal servant of Krishna. My only function, my only objective is to please Krishna. That is my eternal constitutional position. So this is the qualification to practice pure devotional service. Freedom from this bodily concept of life. And the 2 obstacles are this bhukti and mukti. And we'll see that of the 2, bhukti is tolerable. These material desires one can have. But if one has this desire to merge with Krishna, to become one with Krishna, it is very dangerous. And one cannot even begin. So we can start with some material attachments and make progress. So we'll discuss more of that next week. So just a quick summary, because I know there's a lot of technical aspects to this chapter. So the qualification to start is the attraction. And that comes from the mercy of a pure devotee. And we increase by our association, this faith and knowledge. And the qualification to practice Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, to advance in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, is the maturity of our faith and the knowledge of Shastra. And again, the faith in the objective means convinced that the only goal of life is to please Krishna. And finally, the qualification to practice pure devotional service, emphasizing pure, is we must be free from the bodily concept of life. Because when we are free from the bodily concept of life, there will be no more material desires, and one will have only desires to please Krishna. Right? So this is the summary. So pause here now and take any comments or questions anyone has.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanva Pranam of the Vishnu Bhakti Guru Maharaj. Thank you Prabhuji for a good lecture. I have a couple of questions. Maybe I'm very confused on this.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about these obstacles in the pure devotional service. You talked about bhakti and mukti, right?
Bhukti.
So,
Bhukti.
Bhukti and mukti. So bhukti, the one is about freedom from material desires, right, Prabhuji?
Yes.
And the other one is, you mentioned mukti is freedom from material anxiety and merging with Brahman. Now, that's where I'm getting little confused, because as far as I thought, mukti, the people who are desiring mukti, they are already freed from this concept of body concept. And they already know that they themselves are spirit souls, and they just want to merge with the Brahman. So if they already freed from that concept, then how will they, there is a need for them to be freed from the material anxiety. And this,
Yeah. So in mukti, there are two types of desires within mukti. One is that one has a specific desire to merge into Brahman, this impersonal liberation. And that is the most dangerous of all desires. And that's what the entire next chapter is being dedicated towards. But there's also a desire that can manifest in this mukti, that I want to become free from this birth and death, old age and disease, all these material desires, all these material difficulties, right? So to become free from that, I must enter Vaikuntha. But my desire to enter Vaikuntha is not to please Krishna, but to become free from my material anxieties. So that is the concept that one must elevate from, purify from. Is that?
so what?
Yeah.
So what about like the material desire, when we say the desire for money, fame, and other things? And what about the day-to-day, like so many problems one faces, and you get overwhelmed with the problems? You want to be free from those problems. So where does that category come in? Are those under the category of bhukti, or they are under the category of mukti?
It depends on where the desire lies. More likely than not, it is within the category of bhukti. It's related to some material need or desire. We can focus on mukti, meaning primarily and almost exclusively this merging with Brahman. That's where Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami are going to take us specifically in the next chapter. So we can sort of focus the definition a little bit more prominently on that aspect of it. And so when we have in the practice of our devotional service other material, desires or material obstacles, you might say, and need to become free from them, we can attribute that to this material, this bhukti aspect of desires. And that's what, again, as our faith grows, right, those desires automatically dissipate. So if I have full faith in Krishna protecting me in all circumstances, providing everything I need, preserving what I have, these statements he makes, then I don't need to ask him for anything. Right? So automatically, as my faith in that Shastra grows, my desires I don't have them. Because all I want, my only desire is to serve Krishna. And so if Krishna is putting this obstacle forth for me, he must have some reason to do so. There must be some benefit for me. The devotee sees it that way. But that takes faith. And so that's why as faith grows, these desires dissipate. Right? They are like, as the faith increases, these material desires go down. They ultimately get eliminated. And that's when we can enter pure bhakti. When I only have one desire. And that is to please Krishna. So you can see this uttama adhikari, this uttama bhakti is very high. The kanishta adhikari is still practicing a very high form of bhakti. Because they have rid themselves of the bodily conception of life. Is that okay, Mataji, or can I provide more follow-up?
I'm understanding, Prabhuji, but this thing which is, in the last sentence you said, now, Kanishta Adhikari, how they are practicing pure bhakti because they have that faith which these, the other pious souls do not have, but they have they freed themselves from the worldly concept of protein, Prabhuji?
Yeah, otherwise they cannot be pure. Right?
That is my question. Then that means the Kanishta Adhikari, they are practicing pure bhakti, so they already knew. There's a concept of one is knowledge that you are spirit souls, but actually when you are practicing devotional life, how many of us are actually always identifying ourselves as spirit souls? So that means one is, at least I'm not even qualified to be called even to be that. So,
Yes.
like kind of confused. So that means one is not even reached that level.
Yes. Okay. That's why we don't use the word pure devotee loosely. Oh, he's a pure devotee. Oh, he's a pure devotee. No, that is not a loose word to be used.
Yeah.
Because it is a very high position. And the position of the Kanishta Adhikari is that their status there is very delicate, meaning it can be lost because the faith is not yet solidified and the knowledge is not yet solidified, right? So they have achieved it, but it's still precarious. They're not yet settled in that position, right? So by progress, so the pure devotional service, it's a very high platform.
Yeah.
But it's achieved by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. One can get it by that process only.
Okay, Prabhuji, one more. I know I'm.
Yeah.
So that means, like, this is really a realization for me. So that means that even this initiation, whatever we say, that is not this thing of being even a Kanish, right, Prabhuji? That does not even has no bearing. It might help for some, but that's not a criteria for a one to be even eligible for Kanish, right, Prabhuji?
The criteria is faith in the objective knowledge of Shastra. Now, when we speak of like initiation, the initiation can help one get there. It helps one reach that because the mercy of Guru is bringing Krishna into their heart. So, but one can take initiation and become not even a pious soul, right? That is just the initiation is a process, but one must practice and follow the instructions and the guidelines to reach it, right? Like one can enter medical school, but it doesn't make them a doctor. One can graduate medical school, but it doesn't make them a doctor. They have to follow what they've learned and practice. So you can get initiation, but if you don't follow and take the instruction of Guru with intense sincerity, in our practice, our faith should at least be that my only objective is to follow the instructions of spiritual master. Because then someday I'll learn to know that my only objective is to love Krishna. But in this initial stage, Guru is telling me that I should do these 2 or 3, 4 things, whatever it is, that should be my only focus. Because it will bring me to the platform to finally realize that my only objective in life is to please Krishna. So we can understand it to be a very high position. We can also be very confident that if we have strong desire to achieve it, it will happen. Remember that the criteria for our progress, success in sadhana bhakti was the intensity of our taste, the intensity of our attraction. How strongly am I desiring it? That will propel us forward. But understand, as you have now, I think, and all of us, it's a very high position.
Yeah, and this is really a big realization. At least I'm just completely overboard. I'm just like taken back. One more question, and this is the last one, hopefully. This one, like the distinction between Madhyam Adhikari, the faith, and the Uttam Adhikari. You said Madhyam is unflinching and Uttam is pure. I understand that the knowledge of the Shastra there is developing and this one is complete, is more confident, all that I understand. But what I'm asking is the faith, intensity of the faith, is it exactly the same in Madhyam and Uttam? Because unflinching and pure, what is the difference as such?
You can first of all, I hope it's not your last question because questions are good. You can understand them to be virtually the same. The faith in the Madhyam Adhikari is it's fully cemented. It's cured. It's not going to break, right? It's not going to falter. And there are slightly different adjectives used for it, but we can assume them to be virtually of the same or very similar, if not exact, for all intents and purposes the same in terms of the level of faith. So don't focus there. The main distinction is on the knowledge of Shastra that differentiates the two.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. It was wonderful
Thank you.
everything. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other comments or questions? Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, can you kind of tell us how is this Yukta Vairagya principle will leads to the pure devotional service? Means what Yukta Vairagya can help you to achieve that?
So we'll talk about the Yukta Vairagya principle, which says that anything and everything in the material world that can be used for Krishna service should be used for Krishna service and not for one's sense gratification. So the point is that sometimes the vairagya, when you say renunciation, right? The Mayavad sannyasis, they will propagate this idea of renunciation that, you should renounce all money. You should renounce all, material advancements, technology, everything. Oh, I am now a real sannyasi. Whereas real renunciation, real sannyasi, according to this principle, this yukta vairagya versus falgu vairagya, is that whatever can be used for the service of Krishna must be used for the service of Krishna. Because it is Krishna's energies anyways. So how that helps us is that we have all these material desires now. We want some wealth, we want some fame, we want some strength, we want some intelligence. So, but we want that for some self-gain, some sense enjoyment. But the Yukta Vairagya principle can teach us that, no, you can use wealth, you can use fame, you can use intelligence, whatever you have. but use it for Krishna's pleasure, not your own pleasure. So it brings us to the point that we don't have to abandon our family and abandon our homes and abandon everything in order to practice pure bhakti. No, instead, we use everything that we have in the service of Krishna. So it makes it a very practical application. And that is why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, really emphasized his Yukta Vairagya principle very heavily in his preaching by his own day-to-day activities, and very strongly presented this principle because it's very important. Because remember, he went out to preach into the masses. He went to the big cities and began preaching. And so this is how we take our material desires and apply them in pure devotional service by just changing our consciousness. Yes, I have so much wealth and I want more money, but not to please my senses, but to please Krishna's senses. Does that help, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhu. Okay.
Is there any follow-up to that, or are you okay?
Okay, Prabhu, I had this, maybe it's a confused question. I don't know. See, what can please Krishna is not just by doing 16 rounds chanting and then involving in ABCD, right? Or is there something beyond that?
Is that a question or a statement?
That's what I said, confused. So, because that means you're also secluding yourself in these activities, but you should be doing some other service in attached to this, right? Maybe if my question is wrong, maybe you can just
Well, you have to. So you are right in that, but maybe the question's presented a little bit off a little bit. So let me try to correct it a little bit and then explain the answer. So when we say that, I can't please Krishna just by chanting. That statement then it becomes a little bit dangerous because Krishna has said that in the Puranas, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, kalo nishteva, nishteva, nishteva gatir nita. So, chanting is the only way. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has expounded, just chant the holy names of the Lord. So, now are we underestimating the potency of chanting if we feel this, right? So that's the fifth offense in chanting of the holy names. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. To think that, you can't just chant, you have to do more. Right? So that, now I think, I'm speculating a little bit, that the essence of your question was a little bit more sublime or sweeter, in that you were saying that, well, if you just chant, great, you can save yourself, but others around you are suffering. So that mood is absolutely correct. So the mood is, yes, to save myself, I just need to chant the holy names of the Lord. I don't need to look to other scriptural, other Vedic principles. I don't have to do this yagya and that yagya and this ritual and that. No, just I can chant and I can be fully saved and enter the realm of pure devotional service. That should be our firm conviction, that I can be saved by that. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said every town and village, this should be chanted. So when one takes to the process of chanting, the mood of compassion grows within them that leads them to want to share this with others and to bring about the same experience they have had with others. And it inspires, and that's what we see our acharyas have done. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went door to door, Lord Nityananda Prabhu went door to door, Srila Prabhupada went country to country, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur went city to city. This is a preaching mission. And Krishna himself says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, there is no one more dear to me, he says, than one who shares this knowledge. And then he says even further, there never will be one more dear to me. So you are absolutely right that what pleases Krishna is one who can help reconnect more of his lost children back to him. And so that should inspire us to take to this process more sincerely, more dedicatedly, so that we can help others. But we should not have doubt in the process itself that leads to perfection. And it is chanting of the holy names. It is association, books, and diet. So it is just that, if you all say that in quotes, but one is not interested in just saving themselves. A devotee has this intense desire to help others. And that's what Srila Prabhupada did. Why he boarded a boat and endured so much difficulty at the end of his life. He was already saved. But his compassion is what propelled him to endure extraordinary difficulties. To help others, right? So, I made an assumption in your question, so I don't know if my assumption was right.
Yeah, sure. Like maybe I'll ask you when you're here.
Okay.
Some more.
Yeah, well, please don't forget what you're going to ask, because it's a good topic to discuss.
Okay, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, one question.
Yes?
How do we actually practice this freedom from the bodily concept, like in real life, every time? Because that is the basic prerequisite to even even if one has a little bit of knowledge, even if the faith is weak and is still developing, but still you cannot progress till you are practicing that thing, right? Even if you're doing devotional service, you're doing all this stuff, you're doing chanting, it doesn't really matter if that freedom from that concept of bodily concept of life is not happening. So I know you would say that chanting we have to improve and we have to do this. So would you, apart from chanting, how do we do this?
I'm sorry, we have no other cure. That is the only cure. It is by very sincere and intense desire in our chanting. So if your desire is as intense as you're asking it to become free from this bodily concept, then we should approach our japa with that mood. And with that process, you'll become very quickly free from the bodily concept of life. It will happen. Yeah, it can give you other processes, but they won't happen as quickly or as effectively as good chanting. And so if you want other processes, they're there, but they won't happen as quickly. This is the most potent, most powerful process. Now, there are other processes that can help inspire our chanting. So I think that might be what you're asking. I'll make an assumption also. That, what are other things that can help inspire our high quality chanting? So that is why we read, Srimad Bhagavatam. We see the perfection others have achieved by this process of chanting. We see and associate with other devotees who have experienced the bliss of chanting and have become free from the bodily conception of life. So by association with the pure devotees, we become inspired by them. When we associate with a pure devotee, it doesn't mean we hang out with them, or association means to become inspired by. To become inspired by means if they speak something to us, we follow that. I can't say, oh, I'm so inspired by this person, and they told me to chant, but I don't want to do it. Then you're not inspired by them. Right? So, when we come in association with pure devotees, we follow their instructions to a T. Right? And those instructions will bring us right back to chanting. By honoring prasadam, more and more prasadam, we will intensify our taste for chanting, which will intensify our freedom from bodily concept of life. So all these different angas of devotional service, Srila Rupa Goswami is going to begin explaining them in a couple of chapters. 64 different things we can do. 5 specific, most potent forms of devotional service. So they're all going to help bring us to this process of really effective chanting. Okay? So it's not that we're only going to chant, but we should have faith that we only need to chant. But because I'm not yet so purified, I don't have the faith in the chanting of the holy names, I'm performing other activities to intensify my faith in the holy names. That should be our consciousness. Right? So I'm doing deity worship. I'm doing reading. I'm doing these other practices, these other angas of devotional service to intensify my faith in the holy names. Because it is the faith in the holy names alone that is needed, but I don't have it yet. So that is how we can approach our other services, our other practices. And, your question will be very explicitly answered coming up in the coming chapters of what to do. But Srila Rupa Goswami guides us. The first 5 angas all are around surrendering to a guru, accepting a spiritual master, taking instructions, rendering service, taking initiation, diksha. Why? Because those that will then unlock the potential to practice the other angas of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Was that clear, Mataji? I kind of went a little bit in circles on that point, but I want to make sure I was succinct enough. Is that okay? Or do I?
It's good, Prabhuji. It's just that it's so overwhelming. I mean, the goal is so high. The parameters are so much. It's a lot.
But yeah, and I sense your fear, the fear of overwhelming. So that it's you have to carry 2 things in your hand. Okay, you can't carry one thing in your hand. I want you to carry both of these in your hand. One, that sense it's very high and a very elevated state. Okay? So that you can carry in your hand. I know you're carrying it. But carry this other thing in your hand also. You have the most powerful, most potent, most amazing resource to achieve that high position in an instant. And that is the introduction to Srila Prabhupada, to Guru Parampara, and to the holy names. This is the fortune I spoke of in the very beginning of this chapter. Now you have an appreciation for the fortune you have. Because fortune means that something I can achieve that is rare, that is very valuable. Otherwise, it's not a fortune, right? If I have a key to a treasure chest, that key is only valuable if inside that treasure chest there is something great. So you have understood that inside the treasure chest is something great. This pure bhakti, freedom from all bodily conception. It's so high and so amazing. Yet I am so far away from it, it feels. That is okay. You can carry that in one hand. But in the other hand, carry with faith and confidence that you have the key to unlock that. It's right in your hands. And that is books by Srila Prabhupada, mercy of Srila Prabhupada, mercy of Guru, who will bring us to chant. So you have to carry both in your hand. High, and I have extraordinary power that I can achieve that tomorrow, if that is my desire. So don't be overwhelmed by the position. Don't forget the extraordinary resource you have in your other hand.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Yeah, that is Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. Okay, anything else? Okay, so thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.